Joining. This is our March user group session in Columbus Sitecore user group. Today's topic is XM Cloud, and Adam Seabridge is going to talk about XM Cloud today. Take away, Adam. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everybody, or good afternoon. So I'm just going to stop my video just because it's a little bit choppy, I think, on my connection. Hopefully that will speed things up a little bit. Okay, so can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yep. Excellent. All right. Welcome to my talk on XM Cloud Demystified. Thank you for coming along and listening to me today. So I guess I'd start with saying I'm not an expert on XM Cloud. I heard about it about, I think, 12 months ago, maybe 18 months ago, when I first heard about it, and it sounded really interesting. And then more information has kind of come out of the woodwork and been shared over the last 12 months. And I wasn't really clear what was included or how it worked or how you deploy to it and customize it. So the idea of this talk is to try and answer some of those questions, I guess. XM Cloud was officially released back in July, I believe, but I think that was just to a limited set of partners and customers, and it is now available for customers with an XM Cloud subscription, I believe. So, quick little bit about me. So I'm Adam Seabridge. I'm a freelance Sitecore Developer Consultant. I'm based in the UK, and I've worked with Sitecore for about 9 years now. And I've been a Sitecore MVP for the last 6 years, and I also organised the Manchester SUG in the UK with a few of the other guys. So start from the beginning. What is XM Cloud? So on one of Sitecore's sites that talks about XM Cloud, it's a fully managed self-service deployment platform for developers and marketers to effectively launch engaging omnichannel experiences in the cloud using Sitecore headless CMS. So I guess that's kind of quite wordy, but makes sense. So I thought I'd see what ChatGPT thought of it, and it's come up with an even longer explanation. But actually, I think it summarizes it probably quite nicely. But I've tried to break it down into a few clearer bullet points. So it's a new CM to create and deliver content fast. It's omni-channel, it's geo-distributed, and it is a fully managed and hosted service. So it has SLAs. You don't need to worry about deployment management. That's all handled for you by Sitecore. And it's not just a traditional CM. It has personalization, analytics, components builder, headless functionality, and a lot more. And also is subscription based. So you need to speak to your Sitecore account manager to help you with prices and guidance on that. But it's, as far as I'm aware, the price is based on traffic and consumption. And XM Cloud has the concept of organizations and projects and environments. So you can think of an organization as equivalent to an XM Cloud subscription. And then when you get access into the XM Cloud portal, you'll be a member of an organization, and then you can create your environments and projects in there. And then there are usually 3 environments per project. So you'd have like a production environment, and then 2 non-prod environments, say for development, UAT, or testing. But you can run XM Cloud in local Docker containers as long as you have a valid Sitecore license. So that's what I'm going to demo a little bit later, an example of that using one of the projects that's available on GitHub from Sitecore. So why XM Cloud? Why does it exist? So we all know that Sitecore, XP, XM are monolithic applications, and there are various pros and cons of this. So, it's nice having all the features and functionality there out of the box in one platform. They're fully integrated, they're familiar to everybody, similar interfaces, etc. But the cons to that, which all Sitecore developers have probably experienced, is particularly upgrades are very complicated, they're difficult. They should be easy, but in theory, but the reality is, unless the project's fairly modern, newer versions of Sitecore, and it's been built in a really clean way, quite often they are difficult to upgrade. There's also a very complicated architecture now for Sitecore XP, lots of different services in Azure PaaS or in AKS, and so it's pretty difficult to maintain and support it. And also the tech stack is now quite outdated and slow, and customers are starting to feel the pain of that. So these are some of the issues that XM Cloud tries to solve. So it now means that you don't have to handle the upgrades; they're done automatically for you by Sitecore. You also no longer need to manage security patches or bug fixes. All of that kind of maintenance is handled by Sitecore. And then another kind of benefit to XM Cloud that perhaps isn't immediately obvious is that it means you can utilize front-end developers more. Sitecore developers are quite hard to come by. They've got a lot of kind of siloed knowledge, and often the documentation is quite hard to find or difficult to understand. And instead, you can take advantage of popular front-end frameworks like React, Angular, Next.js to build your new front-end experiences and utilize those front-end skills that might be easier to find than Sitecore skills. And then also the XM XP customizations, they can be quite difficult and complex to manage with custom code, pipelines, config patches, and all sorts of other customizations that have been implemented in Sitecore solutions. And within XM Cloud, that's more limited in terms of how you do your customizations, or they're done in a different way, should I say, for the most part. So that means that actually it makes the process of maintaining the environment much easier. And then it provides you with rapid deployment through the XM Cloud deployment app and the Sitecore CLI. And then lastly, scalability. XP and XM are limited by the number of CD servers. You don't have CD servers in XM Cloud. You just have the Edge API endpoints, and so they can be scaled infinitely to provide rapid response times to end users. So what that means is you can focus on building the cool stuff for your customers and your clients, and you're not going to be spending a lot of time doing platform maintenance and management. And I'm sure there's a few Sitecore developers on the call today that spent a lot of time managing CI and build pipelines, deployment pipelines, Azure PaaS infrastructure, all that kind of stuff. I'm sure is not what we want to be spending our time doing. So where does this fit in with Sitecore's acquisitions? So over the last 3 or 4 years, there were a lot of Sitecore acquisitions that were rebranded and integrated as Sitecore SaaS products. So you've got now what is Content Hub, Discover, Order Cloud, Personalize and CDP, and Send, and then XM Cloud, which now integrates with most of these platforms. And indeed, some of the functionality in XM Cloud is provided by these, particularly around Personalize and CDP. So when I did a version of this talk last year at the Manchester Sitecore User Group, I had a load of bullet points for this slide, but what I actually wanted to do was draw a nice clear diagram, which I eventually did a couple of weeks after that talk. So this is hopefully easier to understand. I couldn't find anything like this anywhere on sitecore.com or any other sites. I might have missed something like this, but I thought it would be useful to kind of explain what was included in a diagrammatic format. So if you start on the left-hand side, the interfaces, we've got our cloud portal. So that is basically where you manage your subscription or your apps, users, roles, instances, etc. And yeah, you just log into that when you've got a subscription and can do all those updates there. And then you've got the new Sitecore pages, the new what you see is what you get editing interface. So that was based on Horizon, which is now discontinued in XM and XP as of Sitecore 10.3. So pages are only available on XM Cloud. It's not available for XP or XM. And it has a Sitecore component builder integrated, so you can drag and drop components. And it's also got Sitecore Sites application, which allows you to create your different sites and manage those. And then it has a pure headless Content Explorer CMS as well, where you can do content modeling and publishing. You still have the traditional CM instance that we know and love, content editor. So you can still use that, but this is kind of a simpler, cleaner view of that, and still lets you do quite a lot of editing in there. And then at the very bottom there, you've got the XM Cloud Forms Builder. So that is, I believe it's a roadmap item still. So at the moment, Sitecore Forms isn't supported because I think the issue there is there's nowhere for the data to kind of be sent back to. So at the moment, as of today, I think you would need to use something like Jotforms or another kind of third-party forms provider, but there is a plan to have a XM Cloud Forms Builder as far as I'm aware. And then moving into features, there is a headless version of SXA included. It has some limitations, so there's less components than you get in standard SXA. There are some changes there, and also Scriben is no longer supported. That's replaced with Next.js, templating in that instead. So that's a little bit different, but I think for the most part, if you use SXA, headless SXA should feel quite familiar. And then this is where we start to see the integration of other Sitecore SaaS platforms. So there is a light version of personalized and CDP integrated with XM Cloud. So you can get 30 days of user history, and it's kind of a limited subset of personalization rules. So things like current session or day of the week, or a visitor's country or operating system or device, etc. But there are some support in there for rules-based historical data like page views and so on as well. So that's there available out of the box, and from what I've seen, it's integrated quite nicely into pages, and you can utilize that there and create variants of the page as well, rather than just a particular component like you can today in XP. So it looks quite nice. And then just to note on that is that personalization is executed at the edge using Next.js middleware. So that obviously works a little bit different in a headless environment. And then as part of the CDP integration, it'll surface basic web analytics and page performance metrics within the XM Cloud portal as well. So you do get that kind of reporting element to replace some of the information that came through in XP's analytics reporting. And then Sitecore identity, it's now been replaced with Sitecore's unified identity. So that is XM Cloud's version of that, which provides SSO across all applications. So it's signed to all the different products. And then you do get, your automatic updates that we talked about and patches, and Sitecore PowerShell extensions is available out of the box. I believe it needs to be enabled when it's a setting to just enable it, but it is available, and you can then do pretty much all of the things you can do today with SP, as far as I'm aware. And then looking at the deploy features, there is a piece of functionality called the XM Cloud Deploy app, which basically gives you kind of GitOps templates to deploy your apps based on branches. So you set that up in the XM Cloud portal, configure the branches in your Git repo, and then based on the rules there, when you check in, it will deploy your changes automatically in the background, which is quite nice. But then you also have the Sitecore CLI, which you'll be familiar with that if you've done serialization of items in newer versions of Sitecore, or perhaps the items as resources stuff. Then Sitecore CLI will provide you with the ability to not only serialize and push your items up to XM Cloud, but also things like setting up new environments and projects and various other things. So I believe pretty much anything you can do through the XM Cloud portal, you can also do with the CLI tool. So that's pretty cool. And then you have a lot of the stuff that's already there in Sitecore 10 or even older versions of Sitecore. So headless services with your GraphQL and layout service endpoints, and support for JSS, Next.js, and obviously containers. And then lastly, on the right hand side, delivery is handled differently. So we don't have CD servers, as I said. You have Experience Edge, which is the Edge tenant for XM Cloud. And then also there is an editing tenant, which is what is used by Pages. And also, I believe Experience Editor will use the same tenant to provide editing Experience Editor as well. All right, so there are some things that aren't included, and some of this will make sense because it's being replaced by new SaaS functionality. So yeah, we touched on the fact there's no CD servers. There's also no traditional search or custom search indexes. So Azure Search and Solar Search are no longer there, and the reason for that is that they're based on indexing items in the pipelines that run on CD servers and so on, whereas in the new XM Cloud world we don't have that. So there is Sitecore Search, which is another SaaS platform part of Sitecore you can integrate with, or you could use another third party like Conveyor or something, but they have to work based off the HTML page rather than site items in Sitecore and indexing them how we would today with Solar or Azure. So there's a little bit of a switch in terms of how you need to think about that. There's no XP or XConnect or XDB functionality, and the marketing applications that you're used to today, so Experience Analytics, Experience Profile, FXM, Experience Optimization, List Manager, Campaign Creator, Path Analyzer, Marketing Automation, and the Marketing Control Panel, they're all not there because some of those are replaced by the new functionality in CDP. And then there is also no EXM, and because FXA is headless, there's no MVC support or support for the search components. We already touched on the Sitecore Forms functionality. And yeah, Identity Server, there's a replacement for that. Publishing, we don't need a publishing service because we just published to the Experience Edge, so that's already there within XM Cloud. There is also no universal tracker or support for MVC, obviously, and we do lose some of the elements like IP geolocation and update center. And then lastly, we've got some changes to how we need to do customization. So we need to think about those differently. We'll touch on that a little bit later, but there is still support for some configuration changes. And then there's a new thing called webhooks, which we can use. And then also we XM Cloud only supports a single regional geolocation currently, I believe. So that needs to be defined at the start. So something that seems to trip up developers that are new to XM Cloud, I've seen this question asked quite a few times in the Slack channel on XM Cloud, is that there are certain things that are cloud only. So if you run XM Cloud in containers, like I'm going to show you shortly, you will see that you know, content editor, experience editor, etc. work, but certain things don't. So these are those things that will not work. So Sitecore Cloud Portal doesn't work locally, or the deploy app, and then importantly, Pages and the Components Builder and Content Explorer won't work. So if you click on that, if you click on the link for Pages on the XM Cloud dashboard, it's going to give you an error basically and probably confuse you. So the reason for that is it needs a subscription. It needs to run within the XM Cloud portal in order to be able to actually return content from your editing hosts. So there are ways around that. There is a way of directing that pages back to your local editing host instance. But yeah, out of the box, it doesn't support it without a subscription. So yeah, that might confuse you. I have fed this back to the Sitecore team that maybe they could grey out some of these options like I've done in that image below to make that clearer. And yeah, that's been taken back to the Sitecore team. So it'll be interesting to see if that is changed. So XM Cloud is a completely new product. It's not just a new version of XM or XP. So the feature set's different. There are some features you had previously that are different or not there at all, as we just touched on. So that brings some challenges in terms of migrating. So you need to look at your current implementation and the customizations that you've done. But there are certain things that could maybe come across, perhaps content, users, roles, security, and then maybe some templates and layout rendering. So if you've got JSF renderings or SXA ones, etc., maybe you can bring some of that across, but not if it's traditional MVC. So there's no migration path for MVC sites as such. And then yeah, for headless and SXA, it might be possible to bring some of that over, particularly if you've got, you know, JSS sites, etc. You could probably reuse a lot of that because the headless services, as far as I'm aware, haven't changed much or at all really with XM Cloud. And then another thing to think about is personalization is done very differently in CDP personalize, so that can't be migrated either. That needs to be set up again from scratch, and you may find at least with the limited version that you get out of the box with XM Cloud that you can't do some of those things. You perhaps need the full version of CDP for that. And then I guess the other thing to think about is that the kind of access permissions and so on, which you might have in a site today, the Edge Experience Edge isn't going to kind of honor that or know about it. So you need to move that logic to your head, so your JSS or Next.js, etc. site. So what does it look like? I've put in a few screenshots on the next couple of slides just to show some of the things I can't show in my demo because I don't have a subscription to be able to show you pages and so on. But you might have seen some of this at SubCon or Symposium or the other talks. So you might be familiar with it. But on the top left, you've got the Sitecore Cloud Portal, where you manage all of your different settings and set up your projects and environments and so on. And then you have the dashboard, which is what I had a screenshot of earlier with all the different apps on it. You've then got pages on the bottom left-hand side. So this is really quick, modern editing interface with support for drag and dropping components in onto the page and editing all of the content, and then you can preview it and look at it across different devices and so on. So I've not really got my hands on it, but from what I've seen, Pages is very nice to use and much quicker than Experience Editor, similar to Horizon if you've used that. And then if we go on to the next one, we've got our Content Explorer, so we can create content, view it in the tree, edit it. And then on the right hand side, you've got the view of the Content Explorer, where you can see it's letting you edit the content, the fields, and that isn't structured in a tree-like fashion. You can just search and filter through those and edit them. But you've still got Content Editor if you want to go back and look at it in that view and see the structure of your data. And then you've got components, the components builder. So here, this tool is really powerful. You can basically create components without the need for a developer, assemble various different components, and those are then available in the components library in Pages, and they can be dragged and dropped onto the page. And impressively, the components builder supports being able to have external data, so it can pull content from APIs. You can just paste in JSON, etc., map fields, and then build your component to support that external data, and then that can be dropped onto the page. So it's quite impressive, and I think could be really useful for allowing companies to accelerate the development of their websites. And then on the right hand side, you've got the personalized integration here, showing pre-built templates for configuring and targeting rules and different page variants. So that looks pretty cool as well. So in terms of architecture, Excellent Cloud comes with the deployment services and then the content management instances and interfaces that we talked about. And it handles all the publishing to Experience Edge. Other vendors are available, I believe, as well. But yeah, this kind of the bit in the blue dash box is the kind of main focus of the architecture. We kind of touched on most of these points, but hopefully that makes sense. And then if you've looked at Sitecore headless services or worked with JSS and the layout service and stuff, then this architecture diagram will be fairly familiar to you. So yeah, Excellent Cloud is publishing content that is then made available via the layout service or Sitecore headless services, and then that is then available to the head to then display your content on your websites, but very quickly. And then this gives you a bit of an overview of Experience Edge. So I believe you can actually use Experience Edge for Experience Manager with traditional XM, XP Sitecore implementations today. It's not specifically an Excellent Cloud thing, but basically this removes the kind of infrastructure complexity. So you don't have content delivery servers. It scales really well across, globally across different geographies, and you can push content to any different channel. So watches, phones, tablets, etc. And then you can integrate it with any platform. So because the content is made available via the GraphQL and layout service, then you can display that in any application really that consume that content. So there's a few different deployment options. I touched on this before. So you can create a project using the deployment app starter kit, point it at your GitHub repository, and that will handle the deployment for you. And then alternatively, you can use the Sitecore CLI, or I guess you could start with the deployment app and then start using the CLI. So yeah, the CLI gives you a lot of power over the deployment and how you do that. So yeah, I guess you could pick whichever of those makes most sense for your kind of use case. So customizations, these need to be thought about completely differently in XM Cloud. There are limitations on the kind of customizations you can deploy. I guess the first thing is that you should try and move any of your customizations to the head really where possible, and then think about customizing in other ways after that. But if you do need to customize within XM Cloud, the supported options that I'm aware of are configuration files. So you can still do patch files, but they focus more on data and synchronization rather than actually patching kind of system features. And you don't have like the HTTP begin request pipeline type pipelines because we've got no GD instances, for example. So you can't do as much there. And I think the idea is that moving forwards, those as more customization is available via webhooks or other mechanisms, some of those config patches will be kind of phased out. And then obviously within the CM, you can do various configuration options there to change some of the settings and so on like you do today within Sitecore. And then lastly, there's a new customization option called webhooks. This was actually made available in Sitecore 10.3, so it's actually available today in XP. And yeah, there's a good few blog posts out there on how this works. But basically, a webhook is a way for XM Cloud to provide our applications with real-time information. So a web request using that information is including the webhook. So it basically informs another application of something that's happened and sends the information it needs. And there's different types of webhook events. So you've got on end, say at the end of a publishing job, and on update, so changes to an entity. And this is an example of one. So this is the webhook JSON, and that is basically that could be doing something like triggering a front-end deployment on say Vercel after something happens, or cache clearing or site generation, something like that. So it's a way of basically triggering other activities to happen. So quite a powerful option, and something that's quite interesting, a different way of thinking about Sitecore development. And then just a quick look at the development approaches. So if you're working on customizing XM Cloud, then you're probably going to need to set up local Docker containers for customization. So if you're, a Sitecore developer, not like just a front-end developer, then basically you would generally set up Docker containers with your XM Cloud implementation and do your development there, and then you can test things locally, and then you can push your changes by checking them in or with the Sitecore CLI to the XM Cloud instance. If you're a front-end developer, then you probably need to just access the organization to connect your local rendering host on your machine to the host environment, and then you'll be able to build your site locally. And you wouldn't need a Sitecore license for that. You can just run that locally. It just needs an active XM Cloud subscription. And then I believe there's a third option of running edge development without Docker, but I don't think that's available at the moment. So there's two different, there might be a third one now actually, but there's a few different repositories provided by Sitecore to help with how you go about an XM Cloud implementation. So they're not designed to be kind of copied and pasted. I guess the idea is they're more of a reference point for how you would do an XM Cloud implementation. At the top one is the one that I'm using for today's demo, which has some Subcon JSS sites and an MVP site and an event site within it. And then there's another one there for getting started with XM Cloud and headless SXA. So yeah, I would encourage you to take a look at those and learn from them and run the Docker containers locally. And there's also some really good documentation on Sitecore.com, which I'll kind of show you quickly in a bit. All right, so I'm going to do a quick demo of what I can demonstrate locally. I don't have a subscription, so it is a little bit limited, but I can show you what I've got set up with the with this first example, the XM Cloud introduction at the top here, and what's involved in that, and then hopefully we should have some time for some questions at the end. Let's jump to my browser a second. Okay, so this is the XM Cloud introduction repository. So this is what I have pulled down to my local environment. So I git clone this project, and yeah, you should be familiar with a lot of this. You get a Docker folder with your different files, and now I put my license file in here. I've got a Sitecore MVP license, but you do need a Sitecore license to run this. And then you've got various projects in here. So there's different ones. So there's the Subcon sites here, JSS ones, and then there's the MVP one here, which I think is a .NET Core rendering host site. So there's two good examples there. And then you've got your various config files and so on. So yeah, you just basically pull this down and follow the instructions. You need to run the init and give it a path to your license file and your password. I went for the traditional admin B, and then let that run. That'll take a little while, maybe 20 minutes or something, and then you need to run the up file. One thing I would say, it took me a while to get this running because my version of Windows is the Windows 10, but an older version. And I did need to make some changes in my environment file. So yeah, you might need to make some changes about the images that are used. But if you go on the XM Cloud channel in Slack, people are really helpful in there on figuring that out. And then yeah, once you've run that up and it's pulled all the images and deployed everything, you will then get your XM Cloud instance running locally in Docker, and you'll get all these different images running here. So your main ones being the CM, and then your different rendering hosts for the different sites, and then you've got Traffic for handling the routing. Also obviously has SQL database and Solo as well, and then you will be able to use your sites. So let's move this little bar. So I'm logged in here in the Sitecore Cloud portal, but as you can see, I'm not a member of an organization. I don't have a subscription. But I am logged in, and this is my XM Cloud instance running locally in my Docker container. So you can see my MVP site here. So this is from the demo that I just talked about. It's making me log in again. See, this is what you get when you've got the XM Cloud implementation, the Sitecore XM Cloud introduction running. You get your MVP site, and then there's some pages that come along with that, components, and the same for the subcon ones. And if you look in layout, renderings, etc., you can see there are some headless experience accelerator components in here, so you can have a look through those. You can see some changes and things there, differences in what you get, and then you'll see these are the actual sites. So I've updated this a little bit just for the purposes of today. I just published some changes from the same instance, changed this image and so on, just to test out making some updates, and then you get the Subcon EU JSS site, Subcons JSS site as well. And then, you know, this is me, an experienced editor, editing that page. So yeah, you can play around with that. You can obviously update your Visual Studio project here, make changes, and then deploy those to see those changes, and then you would deploy those to the cloud, obviously, in order to actually use those within your XM Cloud environment, either with the Sitecore CLI, which you would just run within here. So if you go on the Sitecore Developer portal, you'll see instructions on how to get the CLI running, but it's pretty easy. The CLI package is already, the services, Sitecore services CLI package is already installed within XM Cloud, so you can then just install the CLI here and then run that to connect your instance, and then you configure it within the portal to have access, and then you can push your changes to XM Cloud. And then yeah, there's oh yeah, I was going to show you on the dashboard. I might have lost my dashboard, but the XM Cloud dashboard, which I showed you before with the links on, when you click on those, as I say, you won't get access to things like pages. But these are the documentation sites on Sitecore.com. So I'd encourage you to have a read through this XM Cloud introduction, the different sections in there, and then once you've read through that, then this the developer section here is really useful for how to use XM Cloud Deploy app, actually getting started with XM Cloud. There's some useful videos here, so things like getting XM Cloud environment up and running. So this, I think, takes you through the one of the other examples, I think the second one on the list, and using local Docker containers for XM Cloud development. So this is all really useful. You can learn about the CLI here, configuration changes, customizations you can make, etc. So yeah, I'd encourage you to dig into these videos and learn more about it. So yeah, if you've got any questions, hopefully that will make sense, and I'll try and take them.
Yeah, we have quite a few questions, so we have some time. Let's go to that.
Yeah, sure.
Sukhjivan asked, does Sitecore provide sandbox for XM Cloud to explore features? I registered on portal.sitecorecloud.io but it shows message that you are not currently in an organization.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, if you don't have a subscription, my understanding is at the moment only partners will be able to be given access to XM Cloud, or customers who have bought a subscription. I don't believe there's an option for developers or Sitecore MVPs at the moment to develop or play with the sandbox or anything. I don't know if there's anyone on the call that can speak to that in a bit more detail, but that's my understanding at the state of play at the moment. I think it's something Sitecore are working on.
Yeah, and you have to drop, but yeah, you are right. And we saw some messages that, like, they're looking into how to provide access to, like, Sitecore MVPs and developers, but there is nothing concrete yet.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, next question. Tarun asked, does it require a different Sitecore license?
I actually don't know the answer to that question. My Sitecore MVP license is fairly unrestricted, I believe, so I might be lucky in that it just works. So it might be that your partner or customer license would work, but I think you would need to double check that. So I don't really understand that fully.
Yeah, I tried with partner license, didn't see any problem. But yeah, I mean, you should check it with Sitecore.
Yeah.
Another question from Sukhjivan. No migration path for MVC sites, meaning we just need to develop site from scratch, or still we can use some of the existing code components? Yeah,
you can't migrate your MVC code or views, or the concept of controllers and MVC pipelines and views is basically doesn't work within the new world of SaaS. So you could update them to .NET Core and use the .NET Core rendering host, I believe. But yeah, not Sitecore, traditional Sitecore MVC, ASP.NET MVC.
So that really means it will be complete new website build.
That's my understanding. Yeah, you can migrate some of the content over and things, but yeah, the reality is, in terms of the actual website implementation, the code base, etc., unless you are already using something like JSS and the layout service and so on, then you're going to need to basically rewrite the front end or the web app side of things.
Yeah, it's a different tech stack, right? I mean,
yeah,
Next.js and so very right. Okay. Next question from Martin. Hi guys, is there some replacement for Sitecore forms in XM Cloud?
Is there some, sorry?
Replacement
for
Sitecore forms?
Yeah, so I think I touched on that on one of my earlier slides. So it's on the roadmap, I believe, but it's not available yet. So yeah, it's something that is in development. So at the moment, you would have to use something like Jot Forms, or is it HubSpot, or something along those lines, I think.
Jayesh asked question, as there is no CD in XM Cloud, we do not publish the content, right? So is there any update to workflow? What about XConnect and analytics?
Okay, so as far as I know, workflow is still there. That still works. You've got your CM instance, you've still got workflow around content. There is publishing, but it's publishing to the Experience Edge, to the publishing your content out to those API endpoints. So that's still there. It's just you don't have a publishing service, the traditional kind of publishing service that we have today in the XP, or the old-fashioned publishing that was baked into XM and XP.
Yeah. And what about XConnect and analytics? You, I think, touched on that too.
Yeah, so yeah, analytics and XConnect basically go away and are replaced by Sitecore CDP, which is, yeah, a completely different kind of beast, I guess, in terms of how it handles personalization and analytics. But yeah, some of that functionality is out of the box, and for the more kind of complex stuff, I believe you would need a full CDP subscription, or indeed you could select another experience kind of analytics platform from the composable stack and integrate that.
Okay. Question from Bevik. Is there any demo video available how to develop feature in XM Cloud?
Yeah, so the sites that I showed at the end of my presentation, there's quite a few YouTube videos there from the Sitecore team on how to build and develop for XM Cloud, and there's more and more now coming out of the community on building components and customizing XM Cloud, and there's some really good resources out there if you look.
Yeah, I think probably check the Sitecore Discover channel in YouTube. They are always posting videos there.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So another question from Shukjivan. Is there any GitHub repo that we can use as a baseline to start for any XM Cloud project?
I guess you're looking for something a bit like Helix Base or something like that, I guess. Honest answer is I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if that'll be something that somebody would create, like a starter repository for XM Cloud. But my understanding is the ones that Sitecore provide at the moment are a reference. They are, they shouldn't be copied like Habitat back in the day. I think got copied as a implementation of Helix, and that was a bad idea, and that's what they're trying to avoid here, I think. So yeah, I mean, I'm interested to know that myself. If anyone knows of a kind of starter repository for XM Cloud, that'd be pretty cool.
Okay. So that's the last question on the chat. Is there any other question anyone has? Okay, looks like no other questions. So thanks, Adam. It was a really informative session today, and we learned a lot from you. And thanks for taking our invitation and doing this for us.
No problem. Yeah, thank you for having me and inviting me to present. And yeah, I'm glad it was useful. But if anyone has any other questions or any, needs any links or anything, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or Slack, or you can drop me an email. And yeah, I'll try and help you out. But yeah, thanks everyone for the time, and yeah, thanks for having me to present.